The first debate of this afternoon is going to discuss the challenges, the opportunities of the private sector to change in changing to a low carbon emission economy, okay? The guests are going to talk about the sustainable practices, boosting innovation, technology, and shared changes that we have with other stakeholders. The panel is still going to discuss how the national development system can strategically join the carbon market, okay, promoting a green transition and encouraging the reduction of emissions. For this panel, we would like to invite onto the stage the Superintendent of Protection and Guidance to Investors from the Value Committees, Ms. Nathalie Vidual. We would also like to invite the Deputy Secretary of Sustainable Economic Development from the Ministry of Finance, Ms. Cristina Fróes de Borja Reis. We would also like to invite the Vice President of Logistics, Operations and Security at Caixa Econômica Federal, Ms. Mônica Monteiro. The main officer of financial institution investments, Ms. Marcia Groszmann Faria. And the comments and moderator, they're going to be done by Ms. Maristela Baioni from the UNDP. We would like to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that your participation is going to be super welcome. Within the materials that you have received, you can write down your questions, remarks regarding the topics that we are discussing. And you can hand your questions or remarks to one of the receptionists, and the moderator is going to conduct the chat here. And for those of you who are following up the event online, you can use the chat box on Zoom, okay, to send your questions and remarks. So I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Maristela Baioni. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be with all of you today. First of all, thank you for the partnership that we have with the ABDE on behalf of Cristina. The UNDP has been is the leader agency of the UN regarding human development and sustainable development, and we have been working really hard when it comes to implementing the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. And in order to move forward on this agenda, the UNDP could not forget one of the main stakeholders on the planet in Brazil, who are the stakeholders, the financial institutions and the development system. I believe that once we understood this and the funding system facilitates the sustainable development agenda, the UNDP has been trying to create deeper partnerships, intense partnerships with the Brazilian development system. That's why we are here working jointly with the ABDE. And of course, this agenda, the 2030 agenda, is an agenda that belongs to all of us. And we cannot stay away from the role that the private sector has. The private sector can be a transformation agent and also promote sustainable development. So the UNDP has been working for quite some time with the private sector. We created the executive secretariat here in Brazil. We have been working with the SDG Compass and how the private sector can promote this transformation so that we can contribute with this greater plan, this global plan, which is reaching the SDGs, making them truly happen along the lines of the 2030 agenda. So the UNDP has been developing instruments. We're going to have the great honor to see the launching of the SDG methodology, UNDP, ABDE, how we can align the development portfolio to the SDGs. And we have been working with the SDG tracker, which is a tracking of all of the contributions made by the private sector. And the UNDP has also been trying to find the development gaps that exist in our country. And we're trying to analyze what are the investment opportunities so that we can overcome these gaps. That is the SDG investor map. So we have been developing many tools, many instruments so that we can boost this agenda. And it's a great honor to be here with our wonderful colleagues. All of them are women. So we have a female panel. How wonderful. Thank you for this. This is very important for us women to work, to contribute, and to have this opportunity to acknowledge the wonderful work that these women do. So I'm really, really happy to have all of you here on this panel. First of all, I would like to start, in order for us to move forward and start our debate, I would like to invite Nathalie Vidual. She's going to be our first speaker. Nathalie Vidual is a superintendent regarding investments at the CVM. So Nathalie, please tell us a little bit how you see the role of regulation of the capital markets and how this regulation can boost or leverage resources so that we can invest in sustainability. Nathalie, the floor is yours. Thank you, Maristela. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I thank you, ABD, for the invitation to take part in this development forum. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here representing the CVM. And first of all, I would like to say that the CVM values all of the ASG values and sustainability values. We work hard so that all of the clients know how to use these, implement these aspects, assess the risks, assess the opportunities, and so that they can truly use this to mobilize all of the private capital so that we can move forward and move on to a greener economy, a more sustainable economy, a fairer economy. And so the CVM is a signatory of the Global Pact since 2020. So we are totally committed to achieving the SDGs. And along these lines and following this rationale, the CVM at the beginning of the year in January published its sustainable financing policy. And this policy brings in it the guidelines and how this government agency is going to promote sustainable development in the capital markets. We are developing an action plan that is going to bring clarity to this policy. The action plan is biannual and it's going to be published soon. And I would like to invite all of you to follow up our website, our social media accounts, because we're going to launch this. And this is very interesting. Now, going back to Maristela's main point, I believe that we can say that after the pandemic, there was a change, a shift when it comes to the ASG instruments, and so also in the capital market, in the financial organizations, in the banks. And I noticed there was a protagonism of this agenda. We have been working with a new perspective, which is the opportunity perspective. It's not only a matter of deciding to invest, to make a sustainable investment, because this is a moral and ethical decision. It's also that. But nowadays, we're already focusing on opportunities, trying to fund opportunities, to bring more income, more jobs. And in fact, we are able to connect the two things, economic growth and sustainable growth. So the investors, they have noticed this, and the investors, they are demanding more and more sustainable financial products, okay? Retail investors and professional investors. And the CVM noticed some risks, lack of information or bad information regarding ASG products, There is no standardization, uniformity in the standards, and this makes the products offer low quality. And these two things together, and so the person that originated the product has more information than the investor, and this brings about with it low security and safety. And we have the greenwashing. So CVM created a huge reformulation of its regulatory agenda, and we included all of the ecosystems of our regulated organizations. Security organizations, the rules have changed, the investment funds rules have changed, and the main focus was to increase transparency, to bring more information regarding risks and opportunities, ESG opportunities regarding sustainability. So a transparency in order to help the investor to grow sustainably. And when we talk about the creation of new products, new arrangements, a new logic of investing based on sustainable aspects, this becomes even more important to promote clarity and to focus on the expansion of this transparency and to increase the information available. That's what the CVM did. And so I'm going to mention resolution number 59 that changed the forms for the open capital organizations. They have to inform to us structured and non-structured information, environmental, social, governance elements. It is a practice or explain this. This is the kind of format. We are encouraging the open companies to do that. They have to gather all of these indicators. Which methodology are you using? Which external agent is doing that? If they don't gather these pieces of information, they have to explain why they're not doing that. And this is a huge advance. And so the European Union also started in this practice or explain a methodology. And from our perspective, this expansion, these new information requirements are also going to bring about with them external oversight. We're going to have auditors, investors, government agencies, other agents monitoring everything. And this is going to make the companies work harder to gather these indicators and report these pieces of information in a more reliable way. And this brings security and safety to our investors. It also generates more objective reports when it comes to what are the sustainability, what are the social environmental impacts that are being generated from that company, from a certain emission. So we truly believe that we're going to have a huge advance by doing that. And obviously, there is a learning curve on the side of the companies, on the side of the regulators. So we're going to also need preventive oversight done by the CVM. What are the best practices? We have to understand that. And after understanding them, we're going to have to guide the market so that there is going to be a convergence towards these best practices. And we have to bear all of this in mind. And when we talk about opening the information, this is aligned with achieving the SDGs because it makes us stop and reflect. It's important to say that the 17 SDGs are not just a list of goals. They are there so that we can understand what are the difficulties, what are the bottlenecks, so that we can ask the right questions and resolve the problems and solve the problems. And so we need to have transparency. And by doing that, we're going to make the agents be able to think about these data. I believe that there was correct guidance done by the CVM to promote these interactions. We're also going to have a learning curve, but this is also natural. And the last point, very briefly, it is the fund rules, and this is very relevant. First of all, because inside the PIFs, we can invest in the regulated carbon markets. And this is an opportunity that we foresee. And besides that, I don't know if you know what is the main aspect. The investors, when they decide to invest in a fund, and sometimes it's the name of the fund. Most of the times they only read the name of the fund and they decide to invest there or not. So the CVM brought an information improvement, and you need to name the fund and to have expressions such ESG. And so the ESG, the policies of that fund, they're going to have to sign a commitment that in fact they have solved the social environmental problem. This has to be proven. Who was the certifier? We're also going to have demands, additional demands, if they use these words. So the impact must be the objective so that the name of the fund can have these ESG terms, sustainability, green, environmental, etc. And so those are the comments that I have for today. And if you are in doubt about anything, feel free to ask me questions. Thank you, Nathalie. Excellent. I believe that this is a huge advance that you are proposing, analyzing the entire ecosystem, the steps, the processes, and to bring this guarantee that investors can come to Brazil and Brazilian investors can trust, and that we're going to guarantee the seriousness of the system. The system that is the greenwash proof, which is the proof of being verified, it is safe. And I believe that this is happening at a very appropriate moment. Brazil now is placing itself again as a relevant stakeholder, a global stakeholder in the climate change agenda, in preserving the environment. And by doing that, we have seen high interest from international investors, even domestic interests, okay? People are betting on the growth of the country, a sustainable growth, and so that Brazil can become an example abroad.
And very quickly, when you talk of ESG and I talk about SDGs, they interact. The ESGs for us in the UN are within the 2030 in governance and all the themes of sustainable governance, which is the great orientation that people, the companies have to go through so that we can have a sustainable planet for all. After that super orientation from Nathalie on what is being done by the stock market and or the SEC, I would like to invite Marcia Groszmann Faria to tell us a little bit of what is in fact is the IDB vest. We don't have a full notion, and I'd like that you exemplify with some experience, concrete experiences in terms thematic titles and how does that work with the format system? How is the work that the IDB is doing in Brazil? If you give us some examples and to aggregate this, that the financial systems and the parallel effort by the capital markets so that we might have a volume of resources that corresponds and this transformation through this sustainable development agenda. It's good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with colleagues. It's a present to us. So greetings to the colleagues that are here present, that those that are also virtually present, following the forum online. I'm Marcia. I work in BID Invest, our IDB Invest. It's the branch of the IDB that deals with the private market. We have three institutions. You have IDB Public, that has its headquarters here in Brasília, in Brazil. And then you have IDB Invest for the private sector and IDB Lab that does the investments of venture capital or other more risks and of lower value. So the IDB Invest did through a consolidation of the agents that did the private sector within the IDB. And our CEO is James Gribben. He took on since 2017 in the creation of this institution. And at that time, there wasn't in Brazil people dedicated to the private sector because we only had a headquarters in Brasília, and it made no sense putting people in Brasília to cover the private sector. So they asked for an office in São Paulo. Brazil is the only office of the IDB in the Latin American Caribbean that has an office in two places, Brasília and São Paulo. We're 11 people in São Paulo, those that do it for origin from the cooperative Parodi, he's in the office. Infrastructure and Energy led by Silvana Bianco, also in São Paulo. And I do the execution and operations with the financial partners. Of course, when we have a project, we have people all over Argentina and based in various other countries. In the sector of financial institutions, IDB Invest in the private sector has around $6 billion all over the region. It's $1.3 billion in the whole region. We have around 150 clients and almost 300 projects in this volume. We have the challenge, and I would say the honor and the privilege as well, of challenging the private sector to take a step beyond in the sustainability area. We challenge, but of course we support. So we see as catalyzers of our clients in embracing this sustainability agenda and to launch, for example, new products. We have examples of financing dedicated to small, medium companies that are led by women. We have specific finance of solar panels for small and medium companies, and we have various themes that are approached where we incentivize the clients to walk with their own feet. I'm a big fan of financial institutions. We see the effort that the client does. It's a great demand of transparency. You have to have certification, reporting, monitoring. We use our expertise to help the client. And within IDB Vest, we can qualify any project in terms of impact. It's called Delta. In my segment in financial institution, the main number is the row. If I'm financing a small and medium companies, this is the main component. And another component that is important, that is hard to measure, which is technical assistance that we give to clients. I always say that to make an operation with us is different from a commercial because we bring other additionalities, non-financial. We give support to develop a framework so that this client can emit in the financial market or a green certification or seal when he makes a loan, technical assistance for the obtaining of a second-party opinion. We formalize a contract and we give support of the second-party opinion so he can monitor his portfolio and how he's going to do a report. Then we also have the blended finance. We use concessionary funds and we put a certain additional value in our loan and the client to do a step more. If he's going to do it for small and medium, if you grow in the north and northeast, you will have this benefit extra. Do you want it? And usually they want, and we can get to an agreement. That's why how we work. We have two very dear clients here, Sicredi and BMDG, in terms of bonds in the market. In the B, that was a public bid in terms of preparation for emissions, and we got into the structure to do the investment of that bond. So it was very nice, cool work, and so it was a very nice collaboration of the IDB. And Sicredi, it was a green bond emission, and we did one subordinate emission issuance. It was very challenging. 10 years ahead in this partnership, very much focused in the issue of renewable energy of the Sicredi. So I think our main, let's say, which we aggregate the most or add the most with our clients, is that little push that we need, and we push a little bit, but we also give support. We have a lot of expertise, internal knowledge, and we make it available when we are going to do an operation for the client. Last week, 2 weeks, sorry, we did with a small cooperative in the Ecuador that finances small businesses that belong to vulnerable populations. They're immigrants and indigenous. It's a small population, but it had a big impact. So we look for that kind of operation, and the impact is more interesting for us, I believe for all of us here. Okay, I'm available. I know that my colleagues in São Paulo can answer anything. If you have any doubts, we can talk. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcia. That was very good to hear of the perspective of a financial institution, an international financial institution. And very cool to hear your speech on technical assistance to give that extra step. Thalita was talking a lack of information, asymmetry information, the construction of creating a capacity, and you putting it already on the financial instrument with an innovative instrument, and at the same time giving this important push so they can build the capability to test new technology, innovation. If you don't have the support, you're not able to advance, and we've been seeing that. And something I liked a lot, and when you mentioned transparency, the issue of certification, verification, and here is a new market, because according to the financial institution advance in promoting credit that is connected to sustainability, we will have an ecosystem with these actors ready, taxonomy, standardization, and capability of measuring impact. It's more of a super contribution that IDB Invest gives, and it works for the best practices to be replicated and adapted. It's very interesting. And to hear now a bit of a small bank here in Brazil, which is the Caixa Econômica. I'd like to invite Mônica Monteiro. She is the Vice President of Logistics, Operation and Security. And because it's a small bank, small but not, that you have a very vast work with the private sector and in different fronts, different formats. So I would like to ask you, so you tell us a little bit of what's the line of work in the private sector, how you see the private sector, and the connection of the effort that you make in financing and credit, and giving impulse so that they might make a transformation to a sustainability agenda. Thank you, Maristela. Good afternoon to all who are following us in YouTube. I thank ABDE for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for Caixa to be back to the ABDE after a few years absent. Since its origin in 161 years, in the core of its issues to create a positive social impact for Brazilians. So the period we were absent from the ABDE was a painful period, I could say it. So it's a pleasure to be back here. Caixa is a small bank, the greatest credit portfolio of the market. We closed with 1 trillion and a few billion, 1,020 billion, and with the greatest number of clients of Brazil. We have 230 million Brazilians, and 180 million are clients of Caixa, be they commercial or social clients, due to the public policies we carry out. So we have a great responsibility in inducing sustainable development in Brazil. We've always had this, and this became more reinforced in our review in the strategic planning of Caixa, and this came into our planning, our internal objectives, and our external commitments. Talking about credit, we are a wholesale or bank, and in other forms of in other ways we promote. So we have 712 billion reais related to sustainable development that have credits, and other 80 that are credit cards, credit, especially My House, My Life programs and others. So how can we do that? You're going to be happy to know about this. How can we do this labeling? These credits need to fulfill two of the ODSs. They have to contribute directly to at least two of the SDGs. And the Caixa has a characteristic in terms of sustainability, of doing an exercise of self-analysis and to check their whole portfolio to see where there's more intentionality. But Caixa has a characteristic that is a little bit different from the market, which I find it is positive. From our sustainable finance, most is social, positive social impact. So when we look at the portfolio of other banks, we look at each other, we investigate each other and our peers. The majority of those has a positive environmental impact. Of course, it's necessary. Chris had talked about ecological transformation plan. Of course, this is important, but we need to remember that one of the pillars of sustainability is the social, and that's sometimes a little bit forgotten. So in credit, we are signatory to Ecuador since 2009, and this talks about the analysis and we are talking here a little bit about and credit of big projects, and we end up replicating in those that not go into the Ecuador principles but are going to the analysis of the concession. So there's some that we have to see. We have 4,000 agencies, and these 4,000 agencies are, for example, just giving a few examples, 3,800 of these buildings are rented, so we can induce the private sector working in sustainable development and being more sustainable in their practice when they ask from those we rent and are more relevant, that they have buildings that have reutilized water, they have full accessibility, bring a little bit of the social. It's an induction that we can do in a specific aspect of the market and the economy. We have this induction in our internal practices. We operate 164 photovoltaic operations, which reduces our consumption. It's a big volume, but it's still very little representative. It's 3% of our energy consumption. So we want to increase and bring more of that. In our contracting, we have 12,000 suppliers. You're talking with the president of logistics. I apologize. We have 12,000 suppliers in our base and an annual budget of around 10 billion reais. So how can we induce these practices in the market? We have our sustainable purchases practices, which is part of our environmental responsibility. We have a life cycle, not only what is being supplied, but how are these being extracted, how are they being processed, and how will this material be thrown away or refurbished afterwards. So it's not all of these our furniture. We have the care. I was trying to remember a better, but reforming and these furniture and then to donate it, so that the technology, refrigerators and others, so that it has an extended life cycle. So we have in our projects with our private and public partnerships, how can they include criteria and aspects that are socially, environmentally responsible, and to put demands on these projects when they are auctioned. So this is to take on the private sector that will take on these PPPs, to put those in their projects, and in the future, not now. We want to get another area of the private sector, which is the investment sector. How can we label what we are capturing so we can attract this kind of investor? And now that we are on a panel that is only women, the issue of leadership by example. Caixa was the first bank in Brazil and one of the first Brazilian companies to have majority of women in their board of directors. So how can we bring more diversity? But how can we do that in the whole company? One of the objectives that we had way back was to give more diversity to our directors and managers. So to work with different publics independently of the size of Caixa, yes, it is a big bank, but independently of the size of the institution or those are not part of it, we have different paths to be explored in this financial system for sustainable development to reach those SDGs.
That's it. Thank you. Only that, right, Mônica? Only those things that you mentioned. And they only gave you 10 minutes. Unfortunately, she was unable to comment on other things because she only received 10 minutes. Mônica, first of all, I would like to highlight a few points of your remarks that really amazed me. They were not just the numbers, because we are well aware of the numbers, but this main focus on everything that is related to the social aspects. This is important because it adds value to the other initiatives that also focus on the environment. And so remember our mantra, the 2030 agenda, never leave anybody behind. And Caixa Econômica has these characteristics to help out the population, the most vulnerable population. And I really, really wanted to mention this because when I was joking around at my bank, those who receive money or loan in the countryside of Piauí, of Mato Grosso, that's my bank, that is my bank branch. And so they have a characteristics of connecting with the users. And so this goes through Caixa Econômica. And so something very relevant about your remarks is analyzing the operational side, the operational chain on which you are working on, and a high concern when it comes to Caixa's actions, the credit, the retail products, and at the same time analyzing where are these resources coming from, where are these funds coming from. and also a specific internal perspective. How can I improve my processes so that I can become a benchmark, an institution that is an example? Walk the talk. I walk according to what I say. I walk according to my principles. And I believe this is extremely relevant. And we know all of the potential that Caixa has, its influence in the market with this giant volume of funds and clients. And so it's important for Caixa to come back to the ABDE so that we are all aligned and in sync when it comes to our sustainable development, mostly focused on people. So I would like to share this or share the floor with Cristina. She is the Deputy Secretary from the Ministry of Finance. And I believe that many challenges, right, Cristina? Working with public policies is also always a challenge. Yes. And I truly would like you to tell us, what has the Ministry of Finance been doing? What are the novelties so that we can organize ourselves better, have a better carbon market, and from the ecological perspective, what can be connected to our debate? And these instruments are very, very relevant for all of the stakeholders on this panel and the stakeholders in the audience. Can you hear me well? Fantastic. Oh, I have a super sore throat today. It's going to be a little difficult for you to hear me, but I really, really wanted to come and take part in this conversation, talking with such interesting people, Cristina, Marcia, Mônica, Maristela. Thank you so much, Kezia, for inviting me, and thank you to everybody who is here. It's a great joy for us to talk about the ecological transformation, mainly when it comes to a sustainable transformation and the role that the private sector has. The word transformation is extremely appropriate for this. We sometimes hear the media, they use the word ecological transition or energy transition. But this plan that I am here to present to you is called Ecological Transformation. Our current priority at the Ministry of Finance, okay? We have the sustainable and the fiscal regime. The tax reform is being discussed at our National Congress. The Ecological Transformation Program has been created to change the production paradigms, technological paradigms, cultural paradigms of our society so that we can have a social and inclusive growth. So from the very beginning, implicitly and explicitly, it is connected to the 2030 agenda and also to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So the three main principles of the plan are to increase our economy's productivity based on technology, generating more jobs, decent jobs. First of all, that's it. Environmental and climate justice, and in third place, reducing the inequalities in Brazil. And I'm only mentioning them, the three of them, but there is no order. Okay, so to have an increase of our income, wealth, analyzing the territories and the different regions, because we know that the regions in Brazil are very unequal. And so based on these principles, the Ministry of Finance is trying to offer financial, regulatory, fiscal, tax, oversight, monitoring for the other plans of the federal administration and the federal government, and they are going to discuss these sustainability goals. And we have a friend here who leads the industrial revolution here in Brazil. And this ecological transformation is connected to the growth of our industrial sector, mainly when it comes to the increase of our technology. So technological intensity, bioeconomy, circular economy, energy transformation, and the new infrastructures. So each one of them, the ministries, they are delivering many products and programs. And we have to analyze how fast this government is creating policies to bring about development. The new PAC has been already launched, and it wants to deliver 1.7 trillion reais to invest, and so that we can have an inclusive and sustainable development. And the new PAC announced the new ecological transformation. Minister Haddad did that, and now we are discussing this topic, how to go deep down into this debate with our society regarding our outputs. So we have many, many measures on top of all of these axes, and those that the Ministry of Finance is directly responsible for is related to the sustainable financial activities. And so my sore throat, I believe, is related to this, because last week we approved the sovereign and sustainable bonds, the issuance of these bonds, and the bill of law of the carbon regulated market, and this was enacted at the Senate. At lunchtime, Senator Leila was reading the report, and it was wonderful to listen to Senator Leila reading about that. And we, including many, many ministries, we created a group. And so I believe that this is going to be the carbon market that is going to be the most powerful in the world. And when it comes to regulations, we're going to be able to count on the support of the CVM, and they also work with us on a taxonomy project. And I'm going to wrap up by discussing the taxonomy, because this is what unites us. I don't know how much of this you know, but for quite some time we have had a demand to standardize the taxonomy, the national taxonomy. And at the Ministry of Finance, we have been doing that with other ministries, with other financial organizations, the central bank, other public financial institutions, the BNDES, SUSEPs, the CVM, and we are about to launch this, the action plan to launch the public hearing to have a sustainable market. And it aims to classify the activities that are related to the environment, avoiding greenwashing, and also promoting this reduction of inequality, to create more jobs, to increase people's income, because this is important for our economy. And this is always a principle, and we also want to promote inclusion. We're going to talk about the national taxonomy plan, and so in the following weeks we're going to debate this, and we have a session in which we have all of the national and international commitments that we have taken over, and we're going to discuss this broadly. And so the strategic objectives, the environmental objectives, the social objectives, the industries that are going to be included, and the discussion regarding the action plan's timeline. Because after the public hearing, after the action plan is reviewed, and we're going to launch it in this year's copy so that it can be implemented, and during next year's copy, we're going to have the Brazilian sustainable taxonomy. And that's it. Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations for your work. I believe that this is very important, not only having a plan, but we have already started testing the instruments, and the most relevant is the message, because the public policies of all this movement, the capital sector, the capital market, the development sector, the private sector. This is a huge bet on having a transformed Brazil. Yes, absolutely. It is a hope. It is something that is like contagious. And in the dialogue that we're having, I have never refused any chat, not even a request for hearing. We are still having a dialogue, chatting with people, and I need to thank the GIZ because Gustavo Oliveira has been helping us a lot in this taxonomy process. We have been having wonderful conversations with multilateral organizations, bilateral organizations, the civil society, other government agencies with this transformation nature. And so we want to reach our entire total potential. Thank you very much. Congratulations for having shared these novelties with us. Huge challenges are still ahead of us. I was discussing recently at the Ministry of the Environment about regulating the carbon market. I know that we still have many, many phases to overcome. We have to discuss the legislation. Many things are going to happen in the future. But in the country, we have been promoting this engagement. It is a positive agenda. It is an agenda that is uniting us with lots and lots of hope and possibilities. I believe somebody mentioned that Brazil is a superpower, super carbon power, and we have to explore this wealth that Brazil has, and at the same time, we have to preserve our natural resources, to use them in a responsible way without leaving anybody behind. So reducing the inequality that was present in what you mentioned. I'm going to look at Cassia because I believe I lost track of time. Oh, I still have 10 minutes. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to be able to pick on the panelists' brains a little more. Any questions from the audience? So I have some questions and remarks for my fellow panelists. First of all, the UNDP is engaged in a new design, in a new way of thinking, a blended financing model for the Amazon region. It is a partnership between the UNDP and the CNI. It's Amazon Plus 21, and we are we are adventurers. Well, we're not adventurers. We have many, many technical people beside us, and we're trying to create a new facility or a new mechanism so that we can increase the funding in that region. Let's start with Nathalie. Nathalie, can you discuss this a little longer, a little more? Ensuring funds, what have you been doing? How are you watching this? How do you see this? The CVM is totally involved in this blended finance. We have been having many conversations. It's important to explain that blended financing is not a financial instrument in itself. It is a mechanism. It is an arrangement so that a structure can become feasible. So the risk and the return is going to make more sense to have more liquidity. And our discussions, they are based on acquiring more knowledge and more information so that we can guide the market participants so that they can use the financial instruments that are already available in the capital markets, and that could be a part of the blended finance arrangement. It's not a specific resolution that we should create. It's not a specific product, but it's an arrangement. But clarification, because when the CVM creates this, the investors and the members of the market, they feel safer so that they can use this mechanism and capture more resources, and also to have social and environmental impact, which is better. Even I am going to feel safer now, continue with our initiative with the CNI, with this Amazon Plus 21 Institute. And I also have a question for Marcia. And Marcia, you mentioned this experience with two ABDE organizations, and I would like you to go a little deeper on your remarks. What are the other possible partnerships that you can have with the IDB Invest, with the development system? Any ideas? I believe that it is possible for us to have the public IDB, a partnership with the public IDB, and we have had some technical cooperations, conversations with many national development stakeholders. And what do we do in the Invest IDB? We offer collateral, loans, equity, capital market products, okay, etc. So we work with all of the institutions in Brazil that are not from the sovereign public sector, and so we have the public IDB. So we have a gray area when we talk about mixed capital. It can be them or us. And we talk a lot with Gabriel Rifas, Rafael from the public IDB. We have the states and the municipalities, the BDG, and then we invested in the bond. So now there are several instruments. We have the financial debentures. They can have a thematic bond. So if you're not a bank and you cannot create a bond, what can you do? So that you can structure many other instruments. You can have FI, FDIC, and we're totally available. We're there for anything you need us. So open doors, open doors. So I believe that this is a great opportunity, and my question was to bring you closer to us. I'm talking about the UNDP. We are helping the BDE. We are not members of the ABDE, but we believe in the ABDE's potential and everything that they represent as an organization that includes all of the development stakeholders, and they have a similar agenda to ours. And we aim to strengthen these partners, okay, and having sustainable development. So to add stakeholders that can add innovation, open doors, and open doors policy. This is what we're trying to have. Mônica, and what about you? And what about you? You don't have many challenges in your life and in your work day, right, regarding Caixa Econômica?
So we've been talking to Caixa, and we've having a dialogue with Caixa, an international corporation. And we understand that there's an effort from the bank, like you mentioned, the work that you've been carried out and aligning to the credit line, to those SDGs, and sometimes an activity contributes to one or two SDGs. How does Caixa see the possibility and stepping further ahead in the evaluation and the use of metrics to measure the impact of the work that you carry out? So I think that's important. It's a challenge. Challenges are good. That's what makes us get up in the morning. But it's not only a challenge of Caixa or the financial system. To measure impact is put for all institutions of society. An important point that Chris mentioned, that we have a common taxonomy. I mentioned the sustainable portfolio of Caixa, which is evaluated in how we are meeting the SDGs. Even if it meets at least 2 SDGs, it could have, if it doesn't meet 2, it could have a negative impact. But that's the taxonomy of Caixa. From the BNDES, they have their own taxonomy. So I know their numbers. I'm in Caixa, but I worked in BNDES. I'm originally from there, so I know the numbers. So 68% of their portfolio is sustainable, but 62% through the taxonomy of Caixa. So why is it important to have a common taxonomy? And this work that the Ministry of Finance is doing is are we comparing apples to apples? Now we're comparing apples to bananas. So each one has their own reading. So the initial point is to have a common measure to measure all. So when we do a real impact of evaluation, this becomes even harder due to the definitions. What are the baselines to know what I was able to move in that measurement? So this process is hard, it's not standardized, it's expensive. So an impact evaluation that is worthy of that name is very complicated. It ends up being philanthropy, but in credits we don't have it yet. We have to work with these challenges. Sustainable development is not of one economic sector. It's important that we work in a network. We have to give our hands to one another in order to develop metrics that work. So we have a challenge. How do I make that impact evaluation to credit from suppliers, from people we rent, and in the future investors to the other aspects of an industry, a financial sector, or an economic agent? How do we do that so that we can have common measurements, common baselines, so we can have the security? Look, I caused a positive impact in this population, this location. Thank you, Mônica. I see there's still a lot of work, great work to do. And this possibility of working in network and to build a dialogue where everyone speaks the same language and we can advance. Cristina, our time is over. I want a quick question. Complement some information. I see that you have some points to add. Let's hear your point of view. In the end, Nathalie whispered to me, I had suggested that Caixa received an invitation to the taxonomy group. So here officially, Caixa, you are invited to these working groups in taxonomy to do this great work, which has an enormous impact. National taxonomy would have a great impact in directing investments. For many nights I was not able to sleep due to this responsibility. Now I'm calmer because we set up a team that is advancing very well in an impressive time. And now we will receive the addition or the help from everyone and should be quicker. I would like to thank UNDP is available. I know you're looking at the theme of taxonomy with other international actors, GIZ, UNEP as well. And so we are available to bring international experiences, international knowledge, so that we can be here always exchanging information and building with solid bases, without any greenwashing, with verification, metrics, analysis of impact, because I think we have all of the elements in Brazil to give back to their society in a way that's sustainable with dignity, justice, and reduction of poverty and greater equality. So with that, we finish this panel. I thank you all for your participation, and I hope I haven't gone off too much. Thank you very much.